This video concentrates on the back rank checkmate, something that can be very simple or very complex. Our first example here actually is from a world champions game, Capablanca with the black pieces. This was played in an exhibition match. White now played knight to b5. And we're going to see a sequence here which demonstrates how one side's back rank can be very weak and how you can take advantage of it. You can see that both kings here have 3 pawns in front of them. So the kings are kind of lacking any oxygen. They can't escape. So if a rook or a queen was able to come down to the back rank, this is the back rank here, the king would be trapped. And this is precisely what Capablanca does. He now, after knight to b5, moves his rook to c5. And I'm sure he must have seen the sequence in advance. White now thinks, happy days, I can win a pawn on c3. And he plays knight takes c3. But the world champion Capablanca had seen a little bit further. Knight takes c3. And you can see here, the more pieces that get exchanged, the weaker White's back rank becomes. Rook takes c3. And now after rook takes c3, White plays rook takes c3. And the danger bells should be ringing because there is no protection for White on the back rank. But the next move is certainly a very special move here, because it may look like black comes all the way down with queen to b1 check here. But this is actually easily defended. White can go queen to f1. And now if the queens get exchanged, White is a pawn up in the ending. And if black plays the horrendously bad move, rook to d1, black has now left his back rank open. So the rook comes to c8 with checkmate. So what is the move that black needs to play here? Well, again, this series of videos is all about recognizing patterns. If you recognize your opponent's king is trapped in, it's lacking oxygen, you should be looking at ways to divert your opponent's pieces away from the defense of the back rank to try to get your own pieces into the back rank. And you should be calculating at a much more in-depth level than you would do if these danger signs were not ringing in your ears. In this position, black can play the amazing move queen to b2. This diverts the queen away from f1, and White is completely lost here. For example, if White goes queen takes b2, rook to d1 is already checkmate. There's no longer a defensive move like queen to f1. What else can White play here? Well, not too much. If, for example, White plays queen to e1, trying to defend the back rank, black can now again try to divert that queen away from defense by playing queen takes c3, and then rook to d1, checkmate, coming up next move. So this is a very simple, I say simple, it's actually a little bit complex, but this is taken from a real game, a world championship game. And we're now going to look at another example, which is quite a lot more complex. And, you know, those of you of a higher level here might even struggle with this next example. So let's move there now. So this more complex example is taken from a very renowned chess player, Tartakova. And we dive into a seemingly harmless position where White now has to take the piece back on g5, otherwise it's going to be a piece down. Rook takes g5. But again, what are the important factors, the important patterns that should be raising alarm signals in your mind? Well, the rook on g5 is a long way out of play. It should be protecting that back rank. It's not really doing anything on g5. It's really misplaced there. So black also has the open f file for his rook, and the queen may be able to find a way in. Can you think of what black should be trying to do here? It's very pretty what black now plays. Really, the one thing you've got to remember is the f1 square is key. If you can try to force the king to h1 and get the queen away from the back rank, the rook can come in there. And you can do this through a series of force moves. And force moves are always the things you should be looking for in chess, mainly. Always start with the force moves. Now, in this position, Tartakova played queen b6 check. He could have gone queen c5 straight away, but this is more picturesque. There's only one move White can play, king to h1. Now, again, look for force moves here. Is there any way black can create a threat? Now, there are a couple of moves that are maybe a little bit superficial. I mean, maybe a move such as queen to b4 gets your attention because you're trying to divert the queen away. So if queen takes b4, you have rook to f1 checkmate. But when you're looking at patterns, when you're calculating, you always must consider your opponent's best defense. And in this position, white can get his rook back in the game with a move such as rook takes e5, and white may even be winning here, having a 2-pawn advantage. So it's more important in this position to not allow that rook in the game, but create another threat which leaves white's rook struggling there. So now queen to b5, threatening either rook to f1 or queen to f1, with checkmate or the win of the queen coming up. And look how the queen sneaks its way into the position. It's very, very nice. King to g1, the only way to defend this square. Queen to c5 check, sneaking in. Of course, we know he could have played this earlier, but I like the way he does this. King to h1. How can you make progress? You want to get the black queen into the most active square. Queen to c4. It's slowly coming into white's half. Again, the threat is rook to f1. King to g1 is the only move. Queen to d4 check. King to h1. And black has now moved the queen from the rather passive d6 square into a much more active square on d4. Look at that square. Very powerful square. Now, again, there are a number of options here. Try to think what you would play, because you could be tempted to play queen d3. Is that the right move? Remember the key factors in this pattern that you should be looking for is the white queen is on the best square it can be on. At the moment, it's defending. If you can maneuver that queen elsewhere, then you may well win very easily. So pause the video if you need to. Well, here, queen to e4 is the best move. You're really placing the queen under so much trouble. Again, if queen takes e4, rook to f1 is mate. The queen is struggling for squares. And after the game continuation, queen to c1, you can work out other continuations yourself at home. Black can now go queen to d3. And the point is here, the white queen's on a lot worse square. King to g1, the only way to stop f1. And again, this is not so easy, but there is a way to do this. Queen to d4 check, king to h1, and now the key move, which certainly has big similarities to the last game of Capablanca's. It's to do with the queen and the rook. Hopefully, after seeing Capablanca's game, you can spot this one, this move. Again, pause the video if you need to. What is the best way to win this position? Queen to d2. If you went for queen takes b2 here, that is okay, but queen to d2, trying to divert the queen away from the back rank, also tries to pick up the rook on g5. And of course, now white has no defense. If the queen moves, we take the rook. If we take the black queen, we have bang, checkmate on the back rank. So there's some examples of the back rank checkmate, and this comes up a lot in chess. So I'm sure you're well aware of this, but I particularly like that last example, which really is a beautiful demonstration of misplaced pieces as well. And like I said, they're going to get a lot harder, these checkmate patterns. Let's move on to the other one.